And welcome back to Frankly Speaking. I'm your host, Frank. Let's call this volume 29 of the Integralist Chronicles. Okay, guys, let's talk about a taboo topic, uh, Zionism. Yeah, I'm going to venture down this path today a little bit. Um, it's a very interesting time that we're living in, and I want to relate it back to my days as a young conservative in the late 90s, early 2000s. When I saw things a little bit differently than I do now. Um, but I like to start with what I'm seeing today, right? With the rise of many of young white males that are tired of being pushed around in a feminist society, a liberalized society where they've all been emasculated now, and it's led to a lot of political issues that are kind of starting to become part of the political discourse and things that in many ways for many decades, at least on the political right, these are issues that were taken for granted. And I think it's because of a lack of social media and the ability to share information. And now that we're in a days and age of the internet, where it's everybody's fingertips with social media, but also the dying off of the mainstream media, and not just like the old school, ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN that the political right always rails against, but even the boomer Fox News kind of a crowd now that's losing a lot of viewers there because a lot of people don't even carry cable TV anymore. I got to be honest with you, I got rid of satellite and cable about 6, 7 years ago. And I generally don't watch Fox News at all. If there's a clip that comes across the internet, like from YouTube or something like that, something I deem important, I watch it. But I refuse to have any media outlets have influence over me. I search out objective truth as best I can. Obviously, we're all biased to a certain degree. But my point is that you know, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I remember Fox News came out in 96, and it was supposed to be sort of a right-wing reaction to the left-wing narrative of CNN, MSNBC, and all the mainstream channels. But in those days, Fox News was where we all turned to. Obviously, we had news publications like the Weekly Standard, and that's another story within itself. But the point is that many of us in those days, the information was geared right to us. It was fed to us. The independent sourcing was very difficult. It's kind of like I've told you with the World War II narrative that's changing, what some people call historical revisionism, World War II revisionism, that is. And that is there's a lot more information on the internet, and people are coming to different conclusions than sort of the hoorah, Murka, we went in there to save the world, and the only thing we asked for is a little plot of land to bury our dead narrative that many of the classical liberals gave us. People are looking at information saying, wait a minute, wait a minute. Now, there could be some danger in sort of this alternative perspective. But I think one thing is clear, and that is information has been omitted from us for decades prior to the age of the internet and social media. Um, but even more so suppressed, right? And I think this is what's changing with sort of this Israeli narrative now on the political right in this battle between Zionists and anti-Zionists, is that the information is changing now, and people have a broader choice. When I first got into politics in the mid 90s, I got into politics right around just before that Monica Lewinsky thing broke out. What was that, 96, 97 with Bill Clinton, right? And Fox News had just come on the scene, and in those days, right, the internet was still in its infancy, and things were still being established. Um, we had the conservative right wing talk radio kind of circuit feeding the narrative, right? Rush Limbaugh at the time was the king of the right, right? Rush Bowl behind the EIB golden microphone was sort of the leader of that movement, but we had other shows, right? Dennis Prager at the time, and Michael Medved was another guy. Who else was there? There's a bunch of guys we used to listen to in those days, and so this is what we turn to, and whatever publication we could find, because the mainstream media was always against conservatism, right? With the exception of Fox News that came on the scene in '96. I remember reading the Weekly Standard and the American Spectator, subscribed to those when I was a young conservative. And in those days, when we talked about the sort of the Middle East conflict, the narrative that was given to us was, listen, Israel is our greatest ally. Israel is the only democracy in the region, and Israel is a strategic partner in the Middle East. And for a lot of us that really didn't know anything about the region or the area, we sort of took the word of many of the sort of right-wing talk radio influencers or the publications like the Weekly Standard by, what's his name? Crystal, right? Bill Crystal. Uh, and of course, whose father was Irving Crystal. And of course, the term neocon wasn't quite formulated yet. We will find out later on that, Crystal and his father, Irving Crystal, of course, were former leftists that converted after the Yom Kippur War in 1971. They saw the left wasn't going to support Israel anymore, and so they moved to the right, so to speak, because with the right evangelical movement, you could get a force, a political force behind the Zionist movement to support Israel. And this is where many people will tell you this is where the right was hijacked by Zionism after 1971. And of course, William Crystal and Irving Crystal. Did I say Bill Crystal? Isn't it Bill Crystal's the actor? Yeah. Is it William Crystal? I forget. Is it yeah, it's Crystal and his father, Irving Crystal, of course. These guys ran the Weekly Standard, or were the founders of the Weekly Standard. And that was a big publication within conservative circles. And they influenced a lot of us at the time. And again, there's very little information you can really dig up. Now, some people have figured it out, right? We have Pat Buchanan, at least as early as the early 90s, starting to figure out there's something going on in DC, a strange relationship between Israel and the American government. And Buchanan was pointed that out, but Buchanan was simply dismissed as a racist, right? Because that's just what winds up happening when you question sort of the Zionist narrative. But as we, as a young conservative, I remember, because I was a moral crusader, right? This has always been my thing. As I said in the last cast I did here, the Lord didn't give me a whole lot of gifts, but the one thing I am thankful for that He's given me, apart from a beautiful family, is a strong sense of a moral fortitude. That's what I've always been. And as a Catholic integralist, well, the reason why I'm a Catholic integralist is precisely because I believe in the moral principles of the church. And it's like I always say, you know, you could beat up the Catholic Church all you want, in so many different ways, as secularists have done, as Protestants have done, and even Jews have done, right? Especially on the moral agenda of the church. But when push comes to shove, and time and space and all that stuff, the church is always right on the moral issues. It's always right on the moral issues, no matter what you tell me. We were right on abortion, as the Catholics were fighting the abortion issue early on in America. We were right on the contraception issue, right? While the conservatives waffled on that in the name of freedom and liberty. We were right on the divorce issue, divorce and remarriage in the 1970s. While again, the conservatives, right? The moral conservatives, the Protestants waffled on that because it contradicts the idea of freedom and liberty. We were right on the pornography issue again, right? We were right on the shacking up out of wedlock issue. All these issues have devolved our culture, our society. Well, devolved, has destroyed our culture, our society, our family. And these moral issues that Protestants and conservatives and every other group oppose, right? Calling the Catholics a bunch of fuddy-duddies, right? The Catholics are always proven right in the end. Because all of these decisions that we made, all of these loosening of moral standards have come back to destroy everything in our society, right? And this is something I've seen, again, being in politics now since the mid 90s. I was a moral crusader from the very beginning. And I've been on record saying, listen, abortion is evil. It's wrong. Contraception distorts the nature of men and women and confuses people and ultimately leads to the sterilization and depopulation of a society. The shacking up out of wedlock destroys relationships. The pornography destroys men. It sort of dehumanizes women as well too. There's problems with all these issues, and this was me in the 90s as a young man fighting this thing early on. And it's something you won't ever get me off. That's just who I am. And so in that regards, when you put me in the world of politics, and the curiosity began in the 90s for me, naturally a lot of these issues, I gravitated toward the Republican Party because the Republican Party, I believed at the time, was going to stop all these things. I would find out later on there was nothing but lip service, especially the pro-life issue. But I believed at the time, they told me at the time, the influencers, the party, the talking heads, the politicians, that their job is to, again, end abortion and sort of bring back the moral majority of Jerry Falwell of the 80s, or whatever, again, family value issues that they encompass, even though nothing is ever actually done about these family values. They use it now, in retrospect, they use it to get a bunch of religious people out to the polls, but they never actually address any of these issues, especially if they're issues that are not politically viable anymore at the polls, right? Right? They always surrender at the end of the day. So for me, being a moral crusader, understanding that America was in great peril because of all these moral issues, which moral issues that I've been proven right on now. Sorry, I'm gonna pat myself on the back as it's all deteriorated now because of these Catholic issues, these issues of the moral law that Protestants and other groups and conservatives never want to deal with. Listen, I thought the Republican Party was the most, what do you want to call it, practical, practical way to go politically in terms of helping to establish the moral law in America and bring back America to some solid Christian moral principles. But of course, what I didn't know, of course, is a lot of these other extended issues, right? I had to learn economics. I had to learn, statecraft. I had to learn foreign policy. And then there's this little thing called Israel and the Israel conflict that growing up always flared up here and there and almost every other month, it seemed like. And this thing in Israel, I simply didn't have an idea what it was. And again, when you ask people about that conflict and know this, you got again, the abstractions, right? Their democracy, our greatest ally, strategic partner. You're like, okay, yeah, okay, sure, I'll buy that. If the Republican Party is going to ban abortion, deal with all the moral issues, get us in some proper economic terms, right? Get away from the communism that the Democratic Party represents, sure, I'll jump on board, even though I really don't understand it. What other choice do I have? It's like when we go to a polls, even to this day, what other choice do we have? You know, as outraged as many of us are about some of the things that's gone on the right over the past 30 years, what are we going to do? Elect a bunch of far left pro-abortion, pro-sodomy Democrats in power? Of course not. No, 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 no. We're always going to vote for the party on the right and the Republicans because there's nowhere else to go. And that's what it was in those days, right? Now, you did have some groups that flared up that kind of bucked the trend in those days that kind of started to see these things. You had, again, the Pat Buchanan wing of the party, you had the Ron Paul wing of the party, but they were all kind of dismissed as kooks, especially the Ron Paul wing, because, well, there was always nefarious characters within their ranks. It was tough in those days with that group. Um, though years later, I would come to realize that while I'm not a libertarian anyway, like Mr. Paul is, I've come to respect him a lot more in recent years, where back in the early 2000s, I dismissed him as a kook and a quack, and maybe I owe somebody an apology for that. Some 2, 3 decades later, I'm just, I'm just that way. In the sense that when I'm wrong, I admit it. I was a young man trying to find and understand politics, trying to understand statecraft. But, the Israel thing at the time, it was supported by a lot of good and decent conservatives, people like me, because, all right, we trusted the party. We trusted our leadership. We trusted the influencers, right? And come to find out, a lot of the influencers, let's be honest here, they're Jews. A lot of conservative influencers are Jews, and they have an affinity, a loyalty to Israel. When you listen to a Dennis Prager, a Michael Medved back in the day, a Dennis Shapiro, or Mark Levin, they simply are Jews that are doing what they believe is right for, again, something that has a religious connotation in their minds. I'm not saying that's necessarily wrong, but for those of us that are on the outside, and that's part of the issue, is those of us that are on the outside that may have a different perspective, this is when things become problematic. And so many of us supported the Israel conflict 20, 25, 30 years ago, precisely because we were sort of geared in that direction from the influencers, from the talking heads, right? But with the onset of the internet and the fruition of the internet and social media now, with new information at our fingertips, that's kind of changed the ball game now. It's changed everything. And what we're seeing now on the right is a split unlike I've never seen before. Sure, the right has always had its internal debates, right? And that's because, we're debating ideas always on the right. But this one here has reached a boiling point. You go on X right now, and it's an absolute shit show, guys. The divisions and the back and forth and the anger on both sides. And really, I'll be honest with you, the anger is really on the pro-Zionist side that are seething right now. If you guys are following this thing, right, especially with the Tucker Fuentes interview that happened a couple of days ago. I mean, the Zionist Mark Levin, you could hear it in his voice that he's seething. His voice is cracking, it's shaking as he's trying to control his seething anger behind the mic. It's quite amazing. All for a conversation that Tucker had with Nick Fuentes. Now, I get it, right? Because the comeback is Nick Fuentes is a racist and an anti-Semite and a piece of shit. That's what most conservatives will tell you, at least on the Zionist right. But when you ask these people, well, why is he a piece of shit? There's really not much other than he's an anti-Semite. But of course, anti-Semitism is a definition with an open end, right? It's never really defined because it's anti-Semitism. Okay, I want to throw a bunch of Jewish people in the ovens, or is anti-Semitism? I disagree with this American policy in regards to, again, the relationship between America and Israel, right? Because I don't know anybody on the anti-Zionist right calling for harm to Jews. I don't. And sort of the leading spokesman of that, Nick Fuentes, again, has never made these claims that I have seen, right? What I have seen from the anti-Zionist side is, wait a minute, there's a strange relationship between Israel and America and its politicians, right? The question is that anti-Semitism? Is it? Because that's what seems to be winning out, or at least that's the charge that the Zionists are making, is that we can't even question this relationship or any policies of Israel. That makes you an anti-Semite. And I'm thinking to myself, where did this dialogue get screwed up? When did criticizing another nation become a problem? Because we've always kind of done it in America, right? Look at the French. Oh, the French are such dumbasses. Oh, yeah. Speed bump. The jokes we used to make about the French losing in wars and America going in there and bailing them out, right? Right? It's okay to make fun of the French, right? Because they're so kooky left. They're so kooky left over there. But Israel's not exactly a bastion of conservatism, right? We all make fun of the historical nature of the Germans because of the Nazi issue of the 1930s and 40s. We've made fun of communist governments, the Soviet Union, the Russians. Look at how we treat Putin right now, how we view him. And maybe there's some legitimate critiques of Putin. But my point is, we don't have a problem critiquing Russia right now. We don't have a problem critiquing China and the moves China are making, right? But when it comes to Israel, for some reason, this definition of anti-Semitism gets a very broad perspective. It gets a very broad definition so that this critique of Israel cannot be executed. And so here comes this Fuentes Tucker interview. And if you guys watch it, I thought it was a great conversation. I didn't agree with everything in it, but I thought it was a great civil conversation. But because Fuentes has been described as a piece of shit, the right, or should I say, the Zionists are saying he shouldn't be platformed, right? It's kind of like the equivalent of platforming David Duke or the KKK or something to that degree. But if you listen to Nick, and I have, and I disagree with many things that Nick does. And in fact, one of the things I don't like about Nick is how he goes ballistic at times on personal rants. That this big spat between him and Candace Owens has been ugly. It's been public. It's been ugly, and I've condemned the way Nick has handled that publicly. Not that Candace is perfect, but I expect Nick, being a man, to handle that better. He's handled that very poorly. But to have the dialogue from a guy that's having such an influence on young men today, to continue to ignore him, first of all, it's backfired on the Zionists because he's bigger than ever. The more you try and shut him down and censor him, the more powerful he becomes. And then again, we're talking about the right, the political right. And again, being the right for as long as I was taught that the left wants to shut everybody down, shut down free speech, shut down ideas, while the right is fighting in a battering of ideas. There's not an issue that we won't debate on the right because we believe in free speech and free thought and free all of this. But when it comes to this movement, when it comes to this, Zionist thing, the Nick Fuentes, the Ian Carrolls, and a few others, all these guys need to be shut down. They need to be shunned. And now, because Tucker engaged, Tucker gave a platform. Now Tucker needs to go, right? Mark Levin was screaming that Tucker Carlson is a traitor to America for platforming Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes, right? That's amazing. That's amazing to hear that, guys. And especially because, again, fighting in the battle arena of ideas, right? Everybody loves Charlie Kirk, right? And I haven't mentioned the Charlie Kirk death because I took some time off from the cast, guys. And God bless Charlie. I hope he's basking in God's glory. I have my differences with Charlie. Maybe I'll do that in a separate podcast. But the thing is this: Charlie used to go to the university, something I respected, and take on all the challenges, right? From the leftists and the Marxists and the socialists and all those people over there. But for some reason, Charlie never wanted to take on Nick Fuentes. Why? Why? Well, he's a piece of shit. He's anti-Semite, and we can't platform pieces of shit, okay? But you're debating communists. You're debating communists. Aren't communists pieces of shit? I mean, excuse me for all my foul language tonight, guys. This is what I'm hearing, right? Verbatim, word for word, right? The right has never been afraid of anybody. At least when I was in it, everything was up for discussion. Again, this is before social media, though, right? Right? You want to bring on a Nick Fuentes because you want to destroy him. And that's the irony of it all, right? Again, I don't agree with everything Nick says. But the point is that if you believe Nick is this horrible person, anti-Semite, bigot, racist, the worst thing since David Duke, fine. Defeat him. Don't censor him. Defeat him. Beat him. Don't run from him. Stand up to the challenge. Beat him. That's how you get rid of him. If you really want him out the way, if he's really that big of a problem to you and your movement and to America and to the right wing, you defeat him. That's what you do. By censoring him, by shadow banning him, all you do is empower him. And I don't understand why the right continues to run from Fuentes. I don't understand it. I don't get it. Because every time they run from him, it's almost to me it's like they're admitting defeat. They're admitting defeat. They don't want to answer the question that Nick has, right? That's why with the Charlie Kirk thing, again, there was these Dinesh D'Souza, who's a big Zionist. He's another one out there up there with Mark Levin. Boy, man, it's remarkable to see what certain conservative influencers have become and how wide this division is within the right over the Israel and Zionism thing. But it's interesting because before his death, Charlie Kirk chastised in I think it was a text or email exchange, chastised Dinesh D'Souza for actually debating Nick Fuentes on the Alex Jones show. This happened a couple of months ago before Charlie's death. And in the text, you can read it for yourself, right? It's on X all over the place. And I'm paraphrasing here. It's Charlie saying, "How could you platform this guy? I've been fighting this guy for 6 years. He's vermin. By platforming him, you just you giving him credibility. You giving him a place. We're trying to destroy this guy, and you platform him, Dinesh. What's wrong with you? What is wrong with you, Dinesh?" All right. Again, paraphrasing, but Charlie was running from Nick, and he was running from Nick for a long time. What everybody says is no, he just didn't want to platform this piece of shit, racist, anti-Semite bigot named Nick Fuentes. I got to be honest with you, I follow stuff pretty closely. I don't think it was the issue of platforming Fuentes, because again, he's on college campuses debating communists, socialists, Marxists, some real vermins, right? I think Charlie was afraid. I think Charlie was terrified of Nick Fuentes. And I said this even before the passing of Charlie Kirk. I said, this is too strange. He had groypers showing up to these events, asking questions, putting pressure on the Israel issue, the Zionism issue. And Charlie was getting frustrated. He got one call about a week or two before his death where one of his local chapters guys basically called and said, "Listen, are you ever going to debate Fuentes? Are you going to debate Fuentes?" And of course, he deflects and said, No, I don't debate bad faith actors. And it's like, well, what's the bad faith here? What's the bad faith? If you ever watch Fuentes, and again, I don't agree with everything Fuentes says. He's very respectful in every forum he goes. I mean, literally, they could put Nick Fuentes, put him away forever. They have the opportunity because Fuentes will walk into any forum, any debate, any discussion, any platform, and he will travel. This is why he had a great conversation on the Tucker podcast. He came on. Listen, hate him, call him a piece of shit. Watch that discussion. You're not going to agree with everything that Fuentes says. I don't agree with everything Fuentes says. But it was an intriguing conversation, to say the least, to see how this guy viewed things. And yet the right has ran from this. Charlie Kirk ran from this. The Zionists on X want him banned. They don't even want to take him on. They don't even want to discuss things with him. And yet the more they do that, the more powerful they become. You would think, logically speaking, said, okay, listen, this guy is a bigot. He's an anti-Semite, homophobe. He's a scum of the earth. Okay, ignoring him, banning him is not working. Let's sit down with him. Let's destroy him. He's obviously stupid. He can't be that smart, right? Right? He's just a kid. He's 26 years old. Let's sit down and kick his ass. And finally put Nick Fuentes away, embarrass him, humiliate him. We're conservatives. We're in the battle arena of ideas. We discuss and talk about everything. We defeat communists and Marxists and fascists and everything. But Nick Fuentes, for some reason, they don't want to debate. And I think it's a detriment on the conservative movement. I think it's a detriment on the right. Because ignoring him hasn't worked. It hasn't worked. And now you're splitting the base. The latest polling numbers I saw, Trump in February was +8 in the youth vote. I think 18 to 25, +8. Trump now is down something like 25 points, I believe. 20, 25, 30 points now. Just devastating. This is the effect that guys like Fuentes, and not just Fuentes, there's a bunch of guys online that are seeing this over this Zionism and Israel issue. They're bleeding the base. It's splitting the base. So much so, right? That even Glenn Beck came out today and basically said, oh boy, I really hate seeing this divide on the right. I really hate this right now because he sees the concern here. Again, guys, this is a divide on the right I've never seen before. I've never seen this kind of divide before. And simply saying, well, they're just a bunch of pieces of shit. No, they're the young men of our society that have been ostracized. They're the young men that have been forgotten about, that both political parties, both political ideologies have forgotten about. Right? Right? Just like I warned my conservative friends, what was it, a few months back, after the 2022 midterms, after the Republicans lost, they blamed that on the pro-lifers, saying, that's it, it's over. That's it. The pro-life issue off the platform. We got to accept abortions now, or we'll lose elections from here to kingdom come. Okay? So you guys are now caving in on a foundational moral issue, and you think that's going to lead you to victory? You really believe that? You can't compromise on truth and call yourselves, we're fighting a battle arena of ideas. There's some things you have to stand for, whether they're popular or not. I'm sorry. We're all going to stand in front of God's throne one day and be judged. That's number one. That's number one. The problem is, of course, most conservatives don't believe in sort of a real God. They don't. We got this abstract Jesus, personal Jesus thing. Jesus. Okay, doesn't mean anything. It's not real religion. It's fake. It's a form of agnosticism with the name of Jesus attached to it. That's what the right really is. They're not really a Christian party. They're an agnostic party. And they really don't believe in the gospels. They don't believe in the faith. They don't believe in traditions. And they're willing to sell out for the next election. And how's that selling out? That conformity thing, the big tent thing that Republicans have always worked on. How's that worked out for them? The culture, the family, the civilization, it's all been lost. It's all been lost because they stopped fighting for the moral issues. 2022, it was abortion. 2015, I believe, 2014, it was gay marriage. 2000, I'm roughing it here on the years. It was civil unions, right? Now, 1993, Murphy Brown, single mother homes. The mid 70s, divorce and remarriage. The early 70s, pornography. The mid 60s, abortion. The early 60s, contraception. They've surrendered on all of it. All in the name of political expediency. All in the name of winning the next election. And tell me how that strategy has worked out. America is a far left kooky utopia with a broken culture, a broken family, and a broken civilization. Conformity does not lead to victories. Conformity is a short game that eventually loses everything at the end of the day. And this is the same thing happening now over the Zionism issue. Because now you have, guess who? The Dinesh D'Souza's, who is a dispensationalist Protestant himself. And he's drawing the line on this. He's drawing the line on this anti-Semitism, right? Because all of those that don't support the policies toward Israel are anti-Semites. And those people that are anti-Semites were never really on the right. They were never really part of the Reagan Revolution and everything that conservatism, ever stood for. Thus, if you're anti-Israel, you're not a conservative. You can't be a conservative, right? The popular support for everything Israel now determines whether you're a conservative or not. That's the groundwork D'Souza has been laying on X. It's there. Go see it for yourself. He even made a movie on defending Zionism and, of course, the chosen people of God as he sees it. So it's clear. The pro-Zionist side is drawing a line in the sand here against the anti-Zionist side. And there's no middle ground here. There's no appeasing this issue. On the right, it's a real split. And the question is, what does the right wing do about this at this point in time? What does it do? Now, I think because we have, with President Trump, sort of a mixed bag chameleon in office right now, he gives everybody just a little bit, just enough to make them happy. But I'm not sure that's going to work if J.D. Vance, who I'm just kind of assuming here is going to be the nominee, if that's going to work in the future. Because the party heads, most of them are Zionists. They are. And what's going to happen is we're going to, what do you want? The communists, you want AOC and Chuck Schumer and abortion and DEI and transgenderism. You want that back? You want that back? They're going to try and scare everybody to the polls. But I'm telling you right now, I talk to a lot of these young men, and they tell me they're not conforming to a bunch of bullshit anymore. They're just not. They're not going to conform. They see that conformity on the right leads to one loss after another to such a degree that these young men have nothing left. They can't find jobs. They can't buy homes. They can't build families. These men, led by the political right, the boomers, right? The Limbaughs, the Hannitys, the D'Souza's, the Becks, the Shapiros, all the leading voices of American right-wing politics for the past 40 years, they've presided over the utter collapse of American society, culture, and family. And these kids are saying, you've left us nothing. You did nothing to influence change or anything positive. Even of a supposed conservative nature that you promised. And you're asking us to trust you with something else. You're asking us to trust you one more time. Why? You guys have failed at every turn. Look at American society. Look at American culture. It's broken. What positive effect have these right-wing influencers had on society and culture? Apart from lining their own pockets with a lot of money. Big conservative ink, I call it. What positive change have they facilitated? The country has only gone further and further and further to the left. And I said it before the election, this 2024 election, if Trump wins, which he will, because we had a brain dead candidate and we had issues on the other side, that we were going to have this temporary reprieve. Oh, MAGA, we're coming back. We're coming back. No, we're not. No, we're not. We're not coming back. Because Donald Trump's not changing any of the fundamental problems of the nation, which are the moral issues. It's the cultural issues. That's where all this stuff begins. And like I've said before, last 3-4 Republican presidencies, apart from tax cuts, what major piece of legislation do Republicans ever pass other than tax cuts for oligarchs? Right? Oh, sure, yeah. Some will trickle down to the middle class. Remember when George Bush passed his tax cuts? Yeah, well, $500 for the average family, you could buy a set of tires. Thanks, George. Thanks. But what do Republicans do? What seminal, what civilizational changing issues, at least bringing us back to some semblance of tradition, history, faith, Christianity, what did they ever fix in a nation that's, as far left almost as France at this point? Granted, French are still a little kooky. They're always going to be 10 years ahead of us, but we're pretty far off leftists. And this is under great influencers, rolling this stuff on the right. What does the right ever change? Surrendered on abortion, surrendered on gay marriage, surrender on domestic partnerships back in the day. Now it's not an issue because you got marriage, right? Surrender on porn, pornography, contraception, like I keep telling you. You surrender all these things. We're taxed to death. The supposed party of limited government, where's government limited? We're taxed on every transaction we make. We're taxed from birth to death at every turn. regulated to death at every turn. They don't do nothing. Nothing ever changes. And that's what these young men are living through now. And that's not to mention the culture being destroyed through feminism. Well, it's really liberalism, the liberalism of the classical liberals that transforms, right, with Marxist influence into things like feminism that have absolutely destroyed the nature of womanhood, of femininity. And now we got a bunch of young men that can't even find women that are marriageable anymore at this point because women are all broken and rebelling because of feminism. And again, most of this has happened post World War II under the dictates of American hegemony as the world superpower. When does this end? When does it stop? When will we turn the ship around, guys? And these young men are looking around saying, there's nothing left for me here. There's nothing left. And the whole, you got to pull yourself up by your bootstrap. It ain't working anymore. Now, when you've been printing money since 1970s, and you tell people work hard, if anybody works hard in America, anybody can make it, but you're inflating the dollar. So the harder they work, the more you inflate the money, the less the money's worth. You can only work so many hours in a day. That's just human nature. Now what? These kids have nothing, and they're questioning everything. And here's the issue. Here's the issue. Why are we sending $4 or $6 billion a year, 30 billion since October 7th, 2023? Why are we sending all this money to Israel, Argentina, Ukraine, skyrocketing national debt, leading to more inflation for families and these young men? Where's the America first? That's what they're asking. What about Americans first? Nobody sees it. Trump's been in office, what, 9, 10 months? And inflation continues to go up. Nothing has changed with inflation. Life today, right? Today's what? October 30th, 2025. Life today, in terms of economics, inflation, finances, is harder today for most Americans than the day Donald Trump walked into office in January of this year. Nothing has been done about inflation. Nothing. Everything is more expensive. Insurance, groceries, doctors, healthcare, car parts, car repairs, all of it. Go to rent, mortgages, everything is more expensive. And these kids are looking around saying, what the hell is this? What the hell is this? And it's led to this, again, debate online between the Zionists and the anti-Zionists that's dividing the Republican Party, that's dividing the base. And these kids ask, well, why are we sending all this money to Israel? Well, they're our greatest ally. They're the only democracy. And then those kids say, well, wait a minute. We had an election in America where a bunch of ballots were stuffed. What the hell we care about democracy? We don't even care about our own democracy. We don't even respect and honor our own democracy, never mind the democracies of others. Right? What a joke. Kids aren't stupid. They're not stupid. So here we are. What can I tell you? It's one of those issues, guys, that's dividing the party. I understand why people are disappointed. I understand why people are angry. But trying to shame, humiliate, ostracize, ban, censor these people, it ain't going to work. It ain't going to work. My suggestion for the pro-Zionist side, take on the debate. Take it. Mano a mano. Defeat them. That's your only choice. I just don't understand why they don't want to take this challenge on. It's kind of strange, isn't it, guys? Or is it? I don't think it's about platforming. I got to be honest with you. I don't think it's about platforming. I think they're scared. I think they're terrified because there's a lot of questions going down now that people are asking with a lot of information that they can't answer. It's too difficult. It's too hard. Again, may Charlie Kirk's soul rest in peace. But the fact that he was running from this only indicates how terrified the Zionist right was of the anti-Zionist side. The mask has been unveiled. We all see it now. Everybody sees it now. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Volume 29 of the Integralist Chronicles. This is Frank. Sign off. Frank is speaking. Good night, everybody.